Hey everyone, this is Lynn Bartown, and you are listening to the Apex Hour on KSUU Thunder 91.1. In this show, you get more personal time with the guests who visit Southern Utah University from all over, learning more about their stories and opinions beyond their presentations on stage. We will also give you some new music to listen to and hope to turn you on to some new sounds and new genres. You can find us here every Thursday at 3 p.m. or on the web at scu.edu/apex. But for now, welcome to this week's show here on Thunder 91.1. All right. Well, here we are. It's Thursday, 3 p.m., and that means it is the Apex Hour. My name is Lynn Bartan, and we are so excited here. We're celebrating a lot of things this week. One, it's the end of January. That's good. You made it through the first month of 2019. Go, everyone. And also, our event this week has been featuring a fantastic filmmaker and activist who is in the studio with us today, and I'll tell you about her in a second. But her visit is in a collaboration with two different entities on campus. One is kind of an early start to Black History Month. And if you want to find out more about that, you can look it up on the SUU website. But as always, it's a course that we offered, and there's films being shown all through the month of February. And so you can definitely check that out. The other thing that we are collaborating with and celebrating is our SUU International Film Festival. So we're really happy to be collaborating with them yet again. So now we get to talk about our guest. Amandine Gay is here, and she is an Afrofeminist. She's a film documentary maker. She's an activist. She's an actress, and just a fantastic person that we've been really enjoying getting to know. Welcome, Amandine.
Hi.
I'm so happy that you took the time to spend with me on the radio. And we showed your film Speak Up, and I have so many questions about it. I so enjoyed it. But first, we'd love to get to know, and for our live audience and also for the podcast, just a little bit about your background and how you came from there to here. And I know you have, of course, ties in France and Canada and a stint in Australia. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's been a long road to filmmaking. So I'll start with with the beginning, because I think it also gives a bit of context with me. So I'm an adoptee. I'm a transracial adoptee, which means that my parents are white and I'm Black. So I grew up in rural France, close to the city of Lyon. So for those who are not familiar with geographical regions in France, Lyon is somewhere between Paris and Marseille. Marseille being the south, the coastal shore of the Mediterranean Sea. So yeah, I grew up in a village where there was about 3,000 inhabitants, and my brother and I were the only two Black people there. So, it's
small
sort of
village, so small.
Very small. and so, it clearly influenced the person that I am, even just for the fact that when you're an adoptee, right, everywhere you go, people look at you. So I think you can take it, in different ways. But I sort of felt like I was a star also because I was photographed and filmed a lot by my family. So it has sort of probably, developed or hyper developed my, egotistical kind of yay, look at me,
the actress
emerges. I'll never know. I often say that maybe I was an introvert to start with, but I wasn't given, much of a choice.
Yeah.
So I end up, having this sort of really outgoing personality. But I think it's also linked to, having a sense of control.
Yeah.
If you're always going to be noticed and that it's not going to be possible for you to hide, you might as well take control and sort of be visible on your own terms.
Right.
So, I think at some point that's sort of how I made my decision, and I've always been, loud, or basically the person that you are likely to remember, if you've met me, you remember me, whether you like me or not, but you're going to remember me. So yeah, that has had I think a huge impact on who I was. But also in the fact that I was really lucky to be raised in a household where, my mom was the one who studied more. She's the first in her family to go to high school, and then she became a teacher. So she was also the first in her family to become a teacher. Really working class, father working in a factory, and stay at home mother. And so she was the first one to go to high school, become a teacher. And then I was the first one in the family to get a university degree. And, she's always pushed me a lot. And so, yeah, she was the one who made more money, who had studied longer. My dad, he stopped school when he was 14, and he was a street cleaner. And so it meant that he got up really early in the morning at he started work at 6:30, but he finished at 1 p.m. So he was also a caregiver. Like when I was in, kindergarten, it's my dad who was coming to pick me up so that I wouldn't have to stay in the afternoons and I could stay at home. He was there for all my birthdays. He would be the one entertaining kids. And it took me a while to realize that not all families were like that. That was my norm. So I thought that everybody participated in house chores, which was not the case.
That's cool though. What a great model.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I had, this mom who was always like, you can do anything, go for it, very supportive parents. And, I think maybe also that's one of the good things when you're an adoptee, you've been, people have, your family has waited for you a long time. So yeah, there is sort of a messiah kind of arrival, when you get there, it's kind of everybody's coming, the family, the neighbors, everybody's surrounding you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think at least for me, it's been something that has really, given me a lot of strength and confidence, even if I was really different. My parents have really been, cheerleaders throughout my life. When I played basketball, they would be here to all my games, and they've supported all the careers I've gone for. Well, my mom's always been supportive, and my dad was always sort of not saying anything. And if I would say, what do you think? I remember when I decided to go to Paris to study to be an actress, so to go to a drama conservatory. I told that to my parents. So my mom was like, yeah, great. She's kind of really outgoing and always positive. And my dad didn't say anything. So a couple of days later, I was like, so what do you think? And he says, well, if I tell you not to go and I disapprove, will you stay? And I said, no. And he's like, well, you know what I think. And that was, yeah.
So you went from this really supportive childhood and then grew into adulthood and got into filmmaking. But the social activism became a part of it right from the beginning because of how things are in France, right?
Definitely. And also because, my family was quite supportive, but it was like a nuclear circle. I would, the first question that is asked, in Speak Up is, the day when you become Black and what it means in France, right?
Yeah.
And it's all the questionnaire from Speak Up is drawn from my own experiences, And so for me, it was changing school when I was 5 years old. And so, because the kindergarten in which I was, my mom had done a lot of work. Before I arrived, she went to talk to the school headmistress, and she was teaching there too. And she said, we're going to have a little daughter and she's going to be Black. So it would be nice, to maybe prepare other kids because they had never seen a Black person in the village. So, they bought a Black doll. They bought a book about adoption. They did it really well. And then I changed school when I was 5 because my mom changed school. And the first day I got there, and then we were supposed to, line up and hold each other's hand. And I go to a little girl, and then she says, "No, I'm not holding your hand. You're Black." And I had never heard that. Because,
Right.
my parents, I always known I was an adoptee. And of course, I saw that I didn't look like my parents. But they never told me and you're Black and we're white, that never, happened this way. So it was really a huge shock. I'll remember that, my whole life.
Yeah.
And from then on, and I think it depends who you are. I have friends who are really into, astrological stuff. And so they say Libras, constant injustice, whatever. So maybe it doesn't come just from, being a Black face in a white place. But it's true that, from then on, I've always been, a fighter in the sense that I would not, let people, bring me down, be it teachers, be it, other students. Then I got involved really early in student groups, from high school onwards. I would always be the class president.
Mm-hmm.
every year. And then I was like, so I've always been political, but also again, comes from my family. You know, my mom, she was in a union, like in the teachers union. I've always been brought to demonstrations. Again, I thought everybody was demonstrating, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's normal.
I went to university and I had friends who were like, oh, it's going to be my first demonstration. And I was like, what?
You're like, I've been doing this for a while.
I was in a prom the first time I was in a demonstration. So, again, that was also a thing that was encouraged, you know, speak your own mind, be involved in the community. And so, yeah, I did that quite a while. And, of course, it took me to, I would say, more serious activism, when I was in university, because also I was starting to see how, sort of like, French promises, like the promises that the French model are giving were not accurate, you know? And I had more arguments by then to sort of like start deconstructing that though. So my first step was to do my master's thesis when I was at the Institute of Political Studies. So my first master degree, I wrote a thesis on the contemporary stakes of colonization in France, you know, just to show that this history wasn't done, that there were like current repercussions, because at the time, so it was after 2005. So I wrote this in 2006. Because in 2005, a minister in France tried to pass a law that said that colonization had a positive effect in France, and he wanted this particular phrase and framework to be included into history books in classes. So, you know, like that's the first thing that really made me realize that I had to change the narrative. It wasn't like I didn't think about it in that way. But writing the master's thesis really was that. It was like, I am going to write about colonization so that for once and for all, I'm not the only one who's done that, right? But I was like, I'm going to write my part just to show that no, there was nothing positive about this particular part of history. And for Black communities in France, it's had enduring consequences. Just when you look at the representation of Black people in cartoons, in films, etc. So to me, it was like, I cannot just be a bystander. You know, I have to take action, even if it just means action within academia. It was already a first step. And from then on, I moved to being involved in feminist groups and, you know, and just like, you know, being in different groups, but always also having this thing of, and that's probably why I ended up drifting towards art more, is that I'm not doing really well with dogma and rules. And when you're part of a group, there are a set of rules that you have to follow. So you can't always speak your mind, or you have to agree with the general decisions. And I had a hard time doing that. You know, I realized that I was, I'm a free thinker, and I think that in activism and political organizing, one of the things that happens a lot is that because of the way, you know, those activities are shaped, you sort of have to stick to one principle, one or two, and you can't really move from this. And the way my mind works and the way I see the world is in movement. So, you know, it's really hard for me to be staying, really to think the same thing for 2 years. Usually, you know, my position is going to move. I'm going to find some nuances. And I can't deal with the fact that some people are going to, want to force me to keep having the same discourse and to stay in the same line when my mind and my views of things have evolved. So I realized that I couldn't be in a group. You know?
And then how did the documentary filmmaking or filmmaking in general come into your life?
Well, I think that like many women filmmakers, you know, you don't really allow yourself to think that you could be a filmmaker. So it started actually quite early, my, you know, me wanting to be a filmmaker. But it took about, I don't know, for maybe about 10 years for me to admit it. When I was 16, I worked in a summer camp as a janitor. That was my first job ever. And I think it's really good to clean other people's mess. You know, everybody should clean other people's toilets once in their life. It gives you perspective.
It does, that's for sure.
And in this summer camp, it was an artistic summer camp. So there were dance classes, music classes, and filmmaking. And of course, and I was young and I was in love with the film instructor. He was like a couple of years older than me, and so I started, like in my downtime, like he would, give me a lot of films to watch, and so I started developing an interest for film at this time. And he was already making films. He was making, scary movies and gore films. And so we would like do all these shootings where we would like use ketchup and stuff.
Yeah.
And so from really early on, I knew that it was possible to make films with pretty much nothing. Yeah. But I would never dare to do it myself. So I would go work on his films and, do other things. And so that was in my teen years. Then I went to Sciences Po, the Institute of Political Studies, to study journalism. And quite quickly, again, I realized that I was not, I could not accept the rules of journalism back in the day, which were, you have to write what your editor-in-chief says. I saw journalism as a way to express myself. And then I realized that that's not what it was anymore, Right. And that's when I first got an interest in documentary filmmaking. Because I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of like journalism, but you have more time and you are encouraged to express your own views, to be an author, to be someone who has a particular take on the world. And that was the opposite of what journalism schools were about.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it.
So I was like, maybe I could do a master's degree in filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, because there are a few master's degree in documentary filmmaking in France. But again, I sort of like chickened out and did not apply for this master's. Although from the second year at university, I started working at a documentary film festival.
Oh.
So I would go there. I did a 2 months internship. So I was working to organize meetings between young filmmakers, their producers and distributors. So that was...
So you got those relationships right from the get-go.
Exactly. And I was 20 at the time.
Yeah.
And because I loved it so much, I would return there every summer. So I was the bar manager. I was, receiving people. I got to drive D.A. Pennebaker. For those who like documentary filmmaking, it was one of the highlights of my life back then. I was like, oh my God.
Great. Cool.
And so yeah, that was the case until I went to Australia, because I had to do a year abroad at the end of my master's degree. So I went to Australia for a year, and there, the first semester, I still did journalism classes, but the second semester, I took film studies.
Great.
So I had like a film theory class and I had a film production class. And in this film production class, we learned to edit, and to produce, how to make a film. And the final exercise was to create a short film by teams of 4. But again, this time I didn't chicken out, but everybody wanted to be the director in a group of 4.
Of course.
And I ended up backing down because at some point you have to let it go. And so I ended up being the producer. But it helped me a lot when I met Speak Up.
Right.
Because I knew how to organize a shooting.
Yeah.
So that was, my first experience. And I had always wanted to be in performing arts. But I think because there were so many stereotypes around Black people. When I was a kid, I used to play music too. I used to play trumpet. But then I was better at basketball than I was at music. And I'm kind of like, I wasn't dealing really well with not succeeding at something when I was young. And I failed a music test for something and then I stopped playing. I've gotten better now with failure, but at the time it was just like I couldn't deal with it. And so I had always wanted to go back to performing, be it music, I sang, well, I still sing, but also because there were so many stereotypes around Black people. People would always ask me, because I was tall, tall, skinny and stuff. People would ask me if I was if I was actually a basketball player, or if I was a dancer, or if I was a singer. And it was really important at that point in my life to be like, no, I'm an intellectual and I'm doing a master's degree at the Institute of Political Studies. But by the end of my time in Australia, I was done with my degree and I was 21. And I felt like I had spent my whole life wanting to not be a cliche, but not really doing what I wanted to do myself. Like I knew stuff that I had to do because I wanted to please my family. So I knew it was really important for my mom that I would go further away than she did in school. I'd done that. There are so many stigmas around Black people, but also around adoptees, is your adoption successful and whatever. So I didn't want to be the bad adoptee or the adoptee that doesn't go well. So I had always been obsessed with this thing of being perfect, like the perfect student, the perfect, athlete. But then I realized that I'd always wanted to perform. And should I prevent myself from doing something that I wanted just because I didn't want to be a black cliche?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I'm 21. And what if I end up having a corporate job or whatever and be really depressed because I'll be making money, but that's not what I wanted to do. It's going to be too late. So, I kept traveling for a while. Because I was also having this sort of like fantasy that I would be a globetrotter and I would like travel for 10 years. But then I realized that it was not a good idea, you know, in the long run. So I stayed in Australia. I went to New Zealand. I returned to Australia. Then I went to Thailand. Then I tried to come back to France. But because I'd been away for like a year and a half, it was like a really tough transition. So I actually went to England for 6 months.
Oh.
I actually went for the weekend, but having an idea that if I liked, you know, there's a big Caribbean festival, you know, the Notting Hill Caribbean Festival in London in August. So I went there for like 4 or 5 days, but I had this idea in the back of my mind, like if I can find a job, I'll stay. And so that's what I did. I found a job and I stayed there. And I think that by the end of that time, also because I had been in a shared house where there was a drum kit and I always wanted to play drums, you know? And I was like, but I had never touched it. And I just felt this thing of like keeping, you know, preventing myself from doing the thing I wanted to do. So I went back to France and then I announced triumphantly to my parents that I would go do a drama conservatory because now I knew what I was going to do. I was going to be an actress.
Ta-da!
So they had heard that quite a few times, like, I'm going to be a globetrotter. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a journalist. And I'm going to be an actress. So my mom was kind of like, yay, okay, whatever. And so, yeah, I moved to Paris, got into a drama conservatory in the 16th arrondissement. And I had the time of my life. I loved it. So I went back to music too. So I started to learn to play drums because that's the thing I'd always wanted to do. I took, you know, singing lessons. I was doing dancing classes, just like doing a full-on, formation as a performer, right? At this time, I became a burlesque performer as well. And I started to work because I was lucky the first year in my drama conservatory, a stage play director, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
But
theater director.
A theater director came to our school and he picked a few of us for a play. So I got an agent straight away.
Oh, wow.
And so after the second year, I started being able to work while I was, you know, in school. And that's when I realized, you know, how stereotypical roles for Black people. Although, again, like sometimes, you know, the cognitive dissonance is really strange. I did see French films, so I don't know at what point I thought that I could have a role in a French movie because I'd never seen Black people in French films, especially art house cinema.
Right.
You know, but it's kind of like
your somehow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And so, yeah, I was really free at school. I loved school. For instance, I love classical theater. Like I said, you get like the Shakespeare Festival. I'm a huge Shakespeare fan, you know, and so I could, you know, learn all these parts in school. But then I could only audition for Black parts that were really stereotypical when I was in the industry. And that's what, you know, got me back to writing. First fiction, because my hope was to write stories that I could play in. Yeah. And then when I realized that I had no power over the storyline, you know, because producers had the power, that I decided to do a thing on my own and to make a documentary because we had the camera at home. Right. And I thought like that's something I can do on my own. No team, like a crew of 2 was enough, you know? Right. And at least I'll be able to carry out my vision and to represent Black women the way I know them and to sort of like have a document, you know, because I'd been told so many times that the Black characters I was writing were too American or too English and that they were clearly not French Black characters, etc. I thought, you know, next time someone tells me that, I'll be able to be like, this is a film called Speak Up. There's 24 Black women in it. You know, they're real people and they're not the stereotypes you have in mind. So can we now please move on the conversation to whether those Black people exist or not, to can we make this show, you know?
Well, I'd love to get into Speak Up and talk more about it because it's it is a groundbreaking documentary and has broken all kinds of records and boundaries, if you will. And I'd love to talk about some of the themes and things like that when we get back. But it's time for our first musical break. And as always, you know, I love playing some music for you guys and I love world music. And this is a group that's actually a young duo from France and that I've played on the radio before because I love them so much. They're called Ibei, Ibei. And this song is called Exhibit Diaz. And you're listening to KSUU Thunder 91.1.
It's frustrating when you just can't express yourself, and it's hard to trust enough to undress yourself. Just stand exposed and naked in a world full of hatred, where the sick thoughts of mankind control all the sacred. I pause, take a step back, record all the setbacks, fast forward towards the stars in the jetpack. My feet might fail me, my heart might ail me. The synagogues of Satan might accuse or jail me. I got something to say. Oh, yeah. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow's on the way. That name on that birth certificate, that ain't the real me. That ain't the real me. The lies can conceal me. The sunrise and the moon tides and the sky's gonna reveal me. My brain pours water on my tear ducts to heal me. I got something to say. Oh, yeah. Yesterday's gone, tomorrow's on the way. The message grab a hold to every ears it get whispered in. The waters in the bays of New Orleans still glistening. The universe is listening. Be careful what you're saying it. My grandma told me every bed a nigga make, he lay in it. I got something to say. Oh, yeah. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow's on the way. The church, you pray in it. The work is on the outside. Staring out the windows, it's full of songs and housefly. I got something to say. Oh, yeah. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow's on the way. I got something to say. Oh, yeah. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow's on the way.
Close your eyes, my child. Close your eyes, my child. Close your eyes, my child. Close your eyes, my child.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Lynn Vartan here in the studio with Amandine Gay. Welcome back.
Hey, I'm still here.
Yay. So what I'd love to get into talking about is talking about your film Speak Up, which we showed last night as part of our SU International Film Festival. The first thing I'd love to ask you about it is about the title. We've been saying Speak Up, the English translation, of course, but the title in French has sort of a double meaning, right?
Yeah, exactly. In French, it's ouvrir la voie. And in French, voix has two spellings. So V-O-I-X is a voice, but V-O-I-E means way or path. So, it's sort of like a play on word because, we wrote it, usually ouvrir la voie would be like open a path or open a way. But I put it with the X so that it would be, you have the sounding thing. So you think about open the way, but then you see how it's written, it's open your voice and, or raising your voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the idea. And because we couldn't translate the play on words in English, we decided to sort of like privilege the speaking up part. Mm-hmm. Because, that is the center of the film. It's a talking heads documentary. It's about empowerment through, taking a stand and speaking up. So, we lost the double meaning, but we kept the central one.
It's a powerful title for sure. I mean, even just as Speak Up. And I guess the next question is for anybody who wants to learn about the film or try to see the film in the US. You're on a month-long tour right now of universities. But how can people either see it or make a play to see it or tell people they want to see it? What's the approach here in the US?
So in the US for this year, if universities or film clubs or those sort of like non-commercial screenings, people can contact UniFrance. So it's the institution that promotes French cinema abroad, because they have this program called Young French Cinema, and every year they select 20 films from young French filmmakers that they are distributing for a year in the States, because these are films that don't have a US distributor yet. So for the moment, that's the only way to see Speak Up, because we don't have a distributor, so that they can't be commercial screenings, and we don't have a distributor for like VOD or DVD. Edition. So, you wouldn't have access to the DVDs that are sold in France, because it's not the same zone.
Right.
So for the moment, it's going to only be screened in, either French institutes or universities or cinema clubs. And, I hope we'll find a distributor along the way. That's kind of the point of having young French cinema.
Right. Okay. And is your tour listed on your website, or as if people wanted to, maybe if somebody was listening and was in Seattle, for example, or LA?
So actually there's a Facebook page for the film. So it's called, Ouvrir la Voix in French. But you have like Ouvrir la Voix /Speak Up.
Yes.
So you like, if you type Speak Up in Facebook, you're going to find the film's page, and there, every first day of the month, so it's gonna be tomorrow. Shown tomorrow. You have the list of all the screenings everywhere, because
great.
there's the tour in the US, but there are still screenings in France and in other countries as well. So that's the way of knowing about the tour. And I'm also sharing this list on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Orfeo Negra, so ORPHEONEGRA.
Yep.
And so you can find it on my personal Twitter or on the film's Twitter. So it's the same thing. It's, at Speak Up, Ouvrir la Voix Speak Up on Twitter. And, you also have it on the film's website, but, the film's website is www.ouvrirlavoixlefilm.fr. We don't have an English website.
Okay.
And then you also have the tour list. So there are a few places that it can be found.
Great, because you never know, somebody may be close by and want to check it out. So we've of course seen the film, but for our audience listening, tell us a little bit about it. It's 24 women, is that right? And it's a Talking Heads documentary, and maybe go into a little more detail about that.
Yeah, so the idea of Speak Up is to have a conversation between 24 women from Francophone Europe. So you have French and Belgian women, mostly French, but there are, 3 Belgian women in the film. And the idea is to go through their experience to realize that they have an expertise on what it's like to be a Black woman in France. And my goal was really to, use documentary filmmaking as a way to create empathy, because I realized that if you start talking about, racism, sexism, religious discrimination, etc., from the prism of life stories, then people will open up to those themes. If you were to try to, have a conference or go in a debate about those issues, quite quickly the debate will, become a heated debate, and nobody's listening to anybody. But the cinema is quite different, because once you're seated in the cinema and, the room is dark, and then you have those women who are just basically telling you about their lives. What I often say, is that you rarely see someone in a cinema that stands up and says, "That's wrong." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If they disagree with what's being said, the worst that could happen is that they would leave the theater.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they're gonna stay. And what I've often said too in, Q&As is that for many people in France, it's the first time they had a conversation with Black women for 2 hours without interrupting them. Mm-hmm. And so this was an opportunity to learn things.
Yeah.
Cause, I think that in the interrupting women is the thing, right? And so you don't get to have the entire perspective.
Yeah.
You don't get to have the entire picture if you don't listen to people, for the entirety of what they have to say. So that was also the point of the film.
You said something earlier along those lines that I wrote down in my notes. You said reaching the hearts to get to the minds. I think that's a really beautiful sentiment. And can you elaborate a little bit more on in the way you want to reach people and how you want to reach people.
Yeah. This idea comes, Lars von Trier is a filmmaker that I really admire. And one of the things he said is that to him, a good movie is like a rock in a shoe, and it's something that you cannot deny. And that's sort of like going with you everywhere. And, one of the sensation I like the most about a film is when I leave the theater, but it stays with me and I keep thinking about it. And, only art has this effect on people. You can reach their unconscious. You can reach their heart. You can reach their guts. And so this is a whole different way of talking to people. Like when you're appealing to the mind of someone, you may encounter barriers, but when you're just going to like basic human feelings, because that's what, cinema is about, be it fiction or nonfiction, you're just dealing in feelings and emotions. And so everybody's felt rejected at some point in their lives, When I tell the story, when someone said, I don't want to hold your hand, it might have happened to any human being for any sort of reason. And in that they can relate. Maybe it hasn't happened to them on the basis of race, but it has happened to them. Mm-hmm. And they know that feeling of being rejected, Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's what I like to work on, I don't know the exact quote, but Maya Angelou said that too, She said, people will forget how you look, what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel, mm-hmm. And to me, that's really what cinema is about. I want people to feel something and so that, they move so much that it displaces them, in the way they're thinking and seeing things, and it's quite different also from activism because it's not about convincing them.
Right.
Like I don't expect anybody to get out of the rooms from Speak Up and be like, and I will no longer be racist, sexist, homophobic or whatever, like that's not the point. But what I want is the film to be one of the, few clicks that maybe will make this person see things differently, mm-hmm. And decide that maybe, they are not homosexuals themselves, but, it's none of their business to intervene into other people's sexuality. Mm-hmm. I'm just, giving an example like that. Like maybe you can move people a little, they might not change completely, but they'll be moved to see, those groups of people that they were not seeing as human beings for several different reasons, then they will change their mind because they've been interacting with one of those characters and they like them really well. There's also a bit of manipulation, because I've put the difficult themes at the end of the film. Mm-hmm. So when people's barriers are sort of like low, and also when they've started to interact and empathize with the character. So by the time they realize she's a lesbian, they already like her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's one of the things also that you can do with film. You can present someone the way you want and then say, and by the way, she's a lesbian. And do you still not like her? Yeah. Just for that.
And this film has a lot of firsts associated with it. And you can go into more detail, but the woman that you're speaking of is one of the, if not the first lesbian Black woman on French film.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Speak Up is the first French film that features Black, lesbians, and especially a Black lesbian couple. That's
right.
Definitely a first. Maybe there has been some Black lesbians somewhere, that I've missed, but I did look and I haven't found them. Maybe it happened, but a Black lesbian couple, that's damn sure that was the first time. And to me, it was also a way of having twists, because in Black communities we talk about Black love a lot, but when we talk about Black love, we rarely think about queer people, And to me, it was also really important, especially because one of the characters' coming out story is really violent. She, tried to commit suicide, and she has had like a family breakdown, because of a sexual orientation. And having in mind that it's the movie that I wish I had seen when I was younger, I couldn't leave a younger audience who might be queer to see that, if you were Black and lesbian, then you would have to either, renounce your love or renounce your family. I had to bring some hope. So I was so fortunate to meet this couple.
Yeah.
So that they would tell their story and how complex and difficult it might have been at some points. But then you could also see them, in love and being a Black couple and just being happy. And so to me, it was really important to show that you're not condemned to be alone. You're not condemned to have to choose between family and a loving, relationship. And that, there is also, because when you're young, you tend to not really see that you're going to grow up. You know, like I remember when I was 14, 15, it was really impossible for me to think that there would be something after high school. Like I was just like completely embedded in like high school drama and, you know, and I just felt like this would never end and, you know, and, I think it's really good to be able to offer perspective, you know, to younger Black people and to the global Black community to, remind that Black love may be a concept that goes beyond heterosexuality.
And that's one of the things that you said that you just mentioned that you've said all along is that one of your goals is that, I mean, you almost wish that you had seen this film when you were a teenager or at any age. And that's got to be a very fulfilling thing that you've made this film and now it's here it is. But can you talk a little bit more about, you know, what this film has done and can still do for young Black women?
Well, I think one of the greatest successes I've had with Speak Up is, Black women sending me pictures. So like I've had families sending me pictures, like the grandmother, the mother, and then their granddaughter. And they were like, we all went to see Speak Up. I did, about 100 screenings with Q&As throughout Europe and in the States, etc. But in France, I went to many places. And, when I went to the West Indies, I went to Guadeloupe Island. I had also a lot of, women in their 50s or 60s who were coming to see me and saying, my daughter, she follows you on social network and she was adamant. I came and see that film and now I understand why and thank you so much. And so I really like that there's been this sort of like intergenerational, conversation that's been made possible by the film because often, for instance, in terms of immigrant stories, the first generation migrants, so the parents, to make it, they tend to be, and also because they're not French. So, they feel like they really have to blend in, and they're really grateful to France for having, welcomed them, etc. But their children, they're born in France. So they don't have the same relationship. And sometimes, the difference in this relationship is a really tough conversation to have between parents and their children. Also because the generation of the parents might have encountered a more open racism. Like they arrived in France and people would call them monkeys or whatever. So by the time they have children and those children grow up and then they say my problem is not, nobody calls me a monkey, but I will not get a job that has, that goes with my degree because I'm Black, or they're going to get some types of frustration or they're going to be really outgoing and wanting to be activists and their parents are going to be like, yo, take it easy because we're immigrants. We have to, blend in and be quiet. And their children are going to be like, I'm not an immigrant. I'm French. I was born here. So those conversations, when you have them one-on-one, they can go bad really quickly as well.
Oh, yeah.
Within the family.
We all know about that.
No one's listening to anybody, etc.
Yeah.
But when those parents come to see the film and they see this whole generation of Black women who, when we shot, women were between 22 to 47, right? Yeah. So mostly in their 20s, 30s. When they see this generation talking about all these issues that they're encountering in the school system, in the workplace, etc., then it sort of like puts into perspective what their children have said, because it's not just their children. It's what's happening to a whole generation. So like the film has really been used, and I'm giving the example of the immigrant conversation, but clearly for queer people of color and Black queer people, the film has been also really useful to just be like, look, it's not just me, and it's not, so a lot of Black people, especially Black women, have sort of really claimed the film for themselves and used it in many ways. Also because when we did the crowdfunding to pay for the post-production, the initial cut of Speak Up was 3 hours, which would never have been able, it's not a film that you can show in theaters. So what we did is that we edited out an hour, but these were already sort of like, coherent, phases of the film. These were chapters we edited out. And with those chapters we edited out, we were, sharing one of them every Wednesday on social networks, because Wednesday is the day that films are released in France. And so every Wednesday I would say, oh, look at how great the deleted scenes are. Imagine what the film's going to be looking like. Give us the money. That was the idea. And those extras, right? have been online since 2016, and now they have more than 200,000 views. And they've been used by teachers when they have to work on, you know, discrimination and stuff. They've been used by, again, like in the Martinique Island, a group of Black women who are having a workshop about natural hair. So they use the extras that are on YouTube. So, it's really been sort of, like a community tool. You know, the film is really, people are using it for their own purposes. And to me, that's the best part.
That's amazing.
And receiving photos, I love.
And so that's a whole nother thing that I'd love to, the YouTube channel is widely available. Is that something?
It's with my name. So, it's Amandine Gay. My name, my last name is Gay, J-Y, and it is my true name. Because a lot of people are asking me that.
Do they ask you?
Wow. Is this really your name? And like, they think maybe I chose it, like it's a pseudonym or whatever, but no, it's my real last name. So on my YouTube channel, Amandine Gay, there is a playlist, called Ouvrir la Voix. And on this playlist, you got the trailer, you got all these extras. Not all of them have English subtitles, but I think about, 5 or 6 of them have English subtitles.
That's great. So if anybody's listening in our community who are teachers and want to open this dialogue in their classes, this could be a great resource for them.
Definitely.
And how about the women now? What is your relationship with them? I heard you say you had dinner parties with them. Is that still going on?
Oh no, it's not. Well, also because I'm not there.
Right.
So the main reason why I don't have much of a social life right now.
I know.
Neither with them nor
You're
with
busy.
anybody. I often joke that I return to France every now and then, and people now have 2 kids, and I was just like, I left, they weren't even married, I'm just like, oh, okay, what happened there?
Right.
But yeah, what happened is that when I was making the film, my idea was that since the concept was a big conversation between Black women, I felt that it would have been weird for them not to have met.
Yeah.
So when the group of 24 was, constituted, we started having big dinners at home so that they would meet and discuss stuff. And my hope was also that's more the activist in me, that, things would be created from these meetings,
That's
that they
awesome.
would, go on projects of their own. And it happened, a feminist group was created, a Black feminist group called Moissy, and now it's like a full-blown organization in France. An Afro-feminist marching band was created as well. It's called 30 Shades of Blackness. And so like quite a few projects, were derivated from the film. And, so yeah, we have, we stay in touch through social networks.
Yes.
Because I don't see some because some also were my friends from before. So, but yeah, we keep in touch, and I mean, they've been really supportive of the film. Like, out of the 24, some of them have sort of like real jobs in the sense that they can't go and present the film. But I have a group of 8 of the women who are in the films who go and do Q&As when I can't, So, to me, it's also a great testimony, so as to why the film is really true to what they're saying, is that they're willing to go to any place in France and discuss with the public what the film's been like. So I think it shows that they're quite happy with what it was. And also it's been like an incredible success story for us, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing that was shot in my living room.
Yeah.
We it took forever to be made, like a project that we shot in 2014 and it was released in theaters, in 2017.
Yeah.
So, they saw me struggle. They saw me first,
They're a part of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's sort of like been our collective success. Like, they took part in this thing and then it sort of like blew out. And now there's the US tour, which is like a big thing in France to go to America. So it's kind of like, woo, we've made it,
Fantastic. Well, I could keep talking all afternoon. We have one more musical break. I mean, I had more music, but I want to get back and talk to you more. And I'd love to ask you about your inspirations, who inspires you now and who inspired you in your past. So we'll get back to that in a minute. But in the meantime, I have a song. The title is Mujeres, so women in Spanish. And the band is Y La Bamba. And this is the Apex Hour at KSUU Thunder 91.1. All right. Welcome back. So that song was Mujeres and the band is Y La Bamba. This is the Apex Hour, KSU Thunder 91.1. This is Lynn Vartan and I'm joined in the studio for a last few minutes with Amandine Gay. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And I have some inspiration questions. In your talk today, you talked about some of the writers and some of the other artists and people who have inspired you. And I'm curious, who is inspiring you particularly right now?
In terms of quality of the filmmaking, the person from my generation I truly admire is Dee Rees. She's an African-American filmmaker and she's incredible. Her first film was called Pariah and it was magnificent. And then she's made a musical film. So it's not a musical, but she made Bessie Smith, biopic.
Oh.
And, which is called Bessie. And, then she made, a film that's on Netflix that's called Mudbound.
Okay.
And so, well, to me, she's amazing. Like the photography is always good. Great, direction of actors. I really admire her. So yeah, that's the kind of first time.
Tell me her name one more time.
Dee Rees. So
Okay.
it's Dee and then Reese.
Okay, perfect.
Or Rees. I'm not sure, but
That's enough to find it for sure.
you can find her and really like her work is amazing. I really like Leland Waithy's work as well. The Chai is great. The episode she wrote for Master of None was great.
Yeah.
And I like also this kind of like leadership, and I think the ones that we're all looking up to in terms of leadership is Ava DuVernay, right? Because she's really sort of like setting this path of mentorship, for Black women in the industry and for women of color in general. And I think it's really beautiful to have examples, what we are missing a lot in France are mentors. I often give this example. We're only 2 Black women producers in the cinema industry in France. I'm 34 and Laurence Lascaris, the other one, is 38. So we got no elders to look up to,
Yeah.
we have to invent everything by ourselves. And it's quite tough. Sometimes I wish I could go and have figures like, Ava DuVernay in my country, that would help us, like guide us through the industry. So, and she's not the only one, there's Shonda Rhimes, there's Oprah, and you can sort of like also see, generations,
Right.
With sort of like Oprah who was kind of like the first. And then you have like the Ava, Shonda Rhimes generation. And then there's like this explosion in the US where, you have Issa Rae and Lena Waithe and Dee Rees and, so that's something I'm really looking up to and admiring and liking. I also like Ama Asante. She's a UK filmmaker. She made the film Belle. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the ones I kind of, really, look up to. And I saw, so there was a show recently called The Bisexual. I forgot the name of her first name is Desiree, but I don't know what her last name is. And I really like that show.
Okay.
So yeah, in terms of creators, that's what I'm kind of, enjoying right now.
Cool. One question that I've heard people in interviews ask, and I've been asked it too. And it's kind of a funny one. If you met your 2005 version of yourself in a bar for a bar fight, who would win? Isn't that right? Like, I think about that.
Oh, it's definitely the 2005 version
Me
of me.
too.
Because I was feisty, and also I drank a lot, so I would be terrible. At that time in a bar fight, that would have been gruesome. Yeah.
It's a funny question and interesting to think about, right? Because we think we mature so much, but that feistiness, maybe it could serve in a bar fight. And then one question that I always ask at the end of the show, and this can be, it could be super academic or it could be very playful. And that's what's turning you on this week right now. And it could be anything. It could be a food. It could be a podcast. It could be a TV show. It could be it could be anything. It's just sort of a fun way for our listeners to hear something else. So, Amandine Gay, what's turning you on this week?
Okay, so it's something I'm looking forward to. I'm gonna get my hair done when I get to LA,
Yeah,
and And like, I finally got the appointment, scheduled because I had to have pictures sent to the salon.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Because I have like natural afro hair, I need to find natural salons. So I first looked, because my next stop is Seattle and then it's Portland. So I had to look at, through Seattle if I could find a salon. I didn't. Then I looked at Portland. I didn't. Then I looked in Los Angeles and I found a few, but then one was not answering. And then the other one finally answered, but she wanted me to send pictures of the hairstyle I wanted. So it's been a week that I'm on this.
Yeah.
And yesterday she confirmed the appointment.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to get my hair pampered, by the time I get to LA. So that's my
That's
thing.
fantastic. What a great way to end. Well, we're out of time. I'd like to say thank you so much to Amandine. Thank you for spending
Thank you
the
for
time with
having
me. Yay. All right. Well, this is the end of our show, and we will look forward to you listening in next time. In the meantime, thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Apex Hour here on KSUU Thunder 91.1. Come find us again next Thursday at 3 p.m. for more conversations with the visiting guests at Southern Utah University and new music to discover for your next playlist. And in the meantime, we would love to see you at our events on campus. To find out more, check out suu.edu/apex. Until next week, this is Lynn Vartan saying goodbye from the Apex Hour here on Thunder 91.1.